practical precision. Ken Nixon is involved with a family-operated cash crop operation in the Ilderton area producing corn, soybeans, wheat, and dry beans. The Nixon started no-tilling in 1992 and today are a completely no-till, strip-till operation. Their primary goal is soil health leading to high, stable yields achieved by crop rotation, residue cover, compaction avoidance, and no-till. Ken Nixon was also served as director and president of the IFAO for a number of years. Obviously, you've just seen that. So let's welcome Ken up here.
Thank you. I've had a pet peeve that I've asked the board if we would maybe address over the last several years, and there wasn't really a good fit. You couldn't do a breakout session. You really couldn't, you know, it just didn't fit. And so finally they, you know, I'm doing my swan song here, and they said, tell you what, you got to do grace, so we'll let you speak for a few minutes before that, and away you go. So, but my beef has been, how do we resolve or how do we try to fix compaction on headlands? And so these are some of my observations, and I just wanted to share them with you. So where are we here? Green? No. How do we go ahead? Oh, kinky. There we are. The issue. So we have the issue that bothered me was there's fields of stubble that are left untouched, but the headlands are plowed or disripped or something happens to the headland, right? And as I observe and understand more about soil, and especially the biology of soil, this is not the solution. Working the headland or disc ripping it or whatever is not the solution. So, but I just see, so the causes, what causes it? And so, well, traffic, duh, yeah, but it's the mechanics of the traffic, and that is, and it took a construction site. We built a bin site back in 2011 in a really nasty wet spring. And so we had excavated a bunch of clay for the scale and for the dump pit and all that sort of stuff, and we had it piled. We're going to use it for fill out behind the bins because it was going to be like 4 feet of aggregate. And so it was, all this wet clay is sitting there, and you know, and you try to drive across it, and it's just horrid. And we're trying to get a driveway in, and I mean, just nothing's working. And so one of the guys, the guy that does my dirt work, he says, well, get a sheep's foot packer. So I call, you know, Toromont or whoever, and they send out the sheep's foot packer and park it at the end of the driveway. And he says, okay, well, he says, drive across that and pack it. And I said, I'm not driving across that. I'll get stuck. And he goes, no, you won't. And I said, you're nuts. And he says, no. He says, just drive across it. He says, but do not drive across it twice. He says, you drive across it, move over, drive across it, drive across it. He says, but do not drive on it twice. Yeah, okay. So I drove across it to prove that, you know, I'd get stuck, and I didn't. And he says, but don't drive on it the second time, because that's when bad things happen to good people. In other words, so what you do is you squeeze all the air and the water and everything out of this ground, and basically, because it's got nowhere to go, it comes up. And he says, you wait for it to dry off, and then you can drive across it again. But he says, only after it's dried off. Well, essentially, that's what happens in a field. We've gone into farms, all of us have gone into farms in a wet fall, and if you have observed, usually you can get across it the first time. But the second time something drives across it, so maybe the buggy follows the combine tracks or something like that, all of a sudden it starts to get slimy. And especially on the headland where, you know, second, third, and fourth trip, stuff's starting to go across it more than one time, and it doesn't have that opportunity to dry off in between passes, that's essentially the same thing. And that's when we lose a lot of soil integrity and we start going down. So that was my lesson in soil mechanics or soil physics or whatever the heck it was from anyhow. The other cause is, quite frankly, our headlands have lower organic matter levels. And organic matter is the glue that will hold soil aggregates together. But organic matter is then also kind of like a rubbery mortar in between soil aggregates that will actually hold them apart from collapsing. It's organic matter, I keep saying over and over again, to anybody who'll listen, is the holy grail of crop agriculture. If you've got organic matter, I mean, life is good. If you don't, things start going sideways on you. And so every tillage pass oxidizes organic matter. So going in and disc ripping or plowing the headland, trying to alleviate alleviate compaction is not going to work, even though it makes you feel good the first time. And so the thing is, back in the old days, when you know you plowed with a horse and then you went out with an old spring harrow, quite frankly, I mean, you work ground and lands, and quite often, because that spring harrow or that simple tillage instrument they had 100 and some years ago, you always followed the plow, because if you ran against the plow, I mean, you rolled up sods and all kinds of weird stuff. So you always did tillage and lands. And then even our first drag discs and stuff like that behind John Deere D's, whenever, you know, you did the same thing. You worked ground and lands. Well, that meant the headland got worked like 7 times for every time the field got worked once. And even today, after hydraulics have come out, you know, the first thing you do, you get into a field and you go around it twice to level something off to turn on, and then you work the farm, and then you always do the headland last to get rid of your tracks. So again, it gets worked twice as much as the rest of the farm. Well, it doesn't seem like a whole lot, but you do that for 100 years, and soon you've added a lot of tillage passes to that headland. And then the same thing happens with corn silage. I mean, back in the days when we used to take corn silage off, I mean, the headlands always got taken off. I mean, maybe by the time the silo was full, you had 7 or 8 acres standing, you know, on this 30-acre field, but the headland always got harvested. And the same thing with straw harvest, you know, you basically kept baling hay until the barn was full. Well, the headland always got harvested, but, you know, maybe there was 8 rows or whatever left, and you blew them back into the field. But the thing is, the headland always got the short end of the stick. And the same thing with manure applications. You go in there with manure applications, and, you know, usually the headland, you know, you ran out of pile before you kind of remembered to finish up and put a good whack on the headland. So you take all of that over 100 years, and pretty soon your headland is in pretty sad shape. So the fix. Let's remediate it or fix it. And the thing is, what you need to do is you need to increase your organic matter, you need to increase the amount of earthworms, and you need to have good roots going deep on your headland is the goal to fix the issue. And the thing is, all 3 of these goals are impossible with tillage. So, because tillage oxidizes organic matter, earthworms are surface feeders. So if you're trying to get earthworms to, you know, which are a great help, the thing is, if you're trying to get more earthworms to grow on your headland, and you come through, you know, the middens, the little middens they build, you know, that's like their pantry. And you go through and you do some sort of tillage pass, they come to the surface looking for their pantry, and it's like a tornado went through. So, you know, if there's no refrigerator in your house, you don't last very long, or you usually move somewhere else, or you just don't replicate, and bad things happen. And the same thing with roots. You need something that is a perennial, and you need something that's going to last and put roots down and grow for a long time. And basically, you need to leave that surface, because that's the solar panel for deep roots. No offense to the folks that are selling seed, but a radish planted at the end of August and terminated, you know, with the frost in November is not going to go down and fix all the stuff down at that, let's call it 18 to 30 inches, because that is really where you're starting to, you're trying to fix, is the stuff deep down. The stuff on the surface, I mean, it'll come eventually, but we really need to do a better job of getting roots and earthworms and everything going and resolving this. So the first thing I believe is we've got to resolve our drainage issues, and that includes, especially on headlands that are at a road, parallel to a road, our municipalities, if you don't watch them, they'll basically just build the road up and shed the water onto your field. So I know I'm a Nazi with the guys on my municipality. They hate my guts, but they will not dump water on top of me unless there is, you know, obviously in some places you can't do it, but I try to make sure they channel the water to some sort of catch basin or get rid of it. And when I'm not kind of getting my way, I usually put the petition. I always have a drainage petition on the dash of my truck, and I put it in front of them and I say, well, then this is the solution, boys. And all of a sudden when they kind of see that, they go, well, maybe we could do something different. As well, a lot of systematic drainage systems that got done years and years ago. I mean, the tile came up through the field and got terminated at the road, but we never put a perimeter tile in. So if you don't have a perimeter tile, get one. And the other thing too is if I do have a kind of a difficult spot, you know, I dig it up, fill it full of crushed stone, and I leave the stone higher than grade. First of all, so the soil doesn't wash in and seal it off. Second of all, so I can find it. And third of all, you don't want to make it too high because you still want the flex table to go over it, right? Second thing, resist the temptation to till it. So like I said, a light disc or a vertical till, I almost think should be avoided. It's the whole earthworm thing. But the other thing too is, you know, there's times in the spring, and this has happened to us, or it's not personally, but I've seen it happen where, you know, the dad or the uncle are looking for something to do there on a spring day, and you're in there programming the calibrating the monitor and checking the planter and everything, and they say, well, how about some headlands? Maybe, you know, I'd go fix them up. And you say, that's a good idea. You go do that. And they leave the yard of the disc or the RTS or something like that, and they're gone all afternoon, and they're happy, you're happy that they're out of your hair and everything, but when you finally get back to the field, you realize, you know, the headland is like black. I mean, they didn't level it. I mean, they made it black, and you say, holy crap, I mean, how many times? Well, it took 6 or 7 passes, but we got her the way we wanted it. You know, well, what they wanted was black, so it took 6 or 7 passes, and they got it black, and so resist that temptation, and kind of our rule is either a box scraper or just a blade, and just basically take the high points, push them off into the low spots, and you'll be amazed actually over time how a lot of undulations and stuff will work their way out of, like, and I'm not talking big craters, but you know, those 3 or 4 inch depressions actually will work their way out of stuff with frost and drying and wetting cycles. Where are we here? Pack manure or poultry litter, if you can get it, that's great. It's great organic matter replacement, and actually those forms of manure are like cocaine to worms. You know, they'll be up on the surface with their little rolled up 20s going down there doing the thing. But don't work it in. That's the big thing. A nice you know, poultry litter or nice composted beef feedlot stuff and out in the headland, and then just leave it on the surface. It'll disappear. It will go away. Just give it a couple of days. And last, and retain your residue. So I know, like, if we do have a farm and we're like Candlins, we trade some manure for straw. So what we will do is we'll always chop the headlands, and then windrow the rest of the field, just simply because the headlands can't afford to lose the organic matter. And as well, I'm suggesting in corn silage, maybe what we should be doing is just taking the headland and you know, put it down with cereal and underseeding, and it's a great place to summer spread some manure if you have to, and it also gives you a place, if the fall does get a little sloppy, it gives you kind of a decent dry place to be swapping wagons out or dumping loads or whatever. Plant cover crops, and mostly perennials and winter annuals. So, like I said, just oats or a radish or something is not going to alleviate things. You got to have something that goes down and stays down. And in our case, we've done this a few times. We've taken a headland and we've retired it for a rotation sequence. So if you do get a good catch of clover with your wheat stubble, when you're terminating your clover in the fall, don't terminate the headland. Just leave it, and leave it for 3 years. And when you go back in your next cycle, it's amazing how much it will have healed. Just 3 years of clover, and you know, we don't bale it off or anything, just go out and chop it back, and life's a whole lot better. And yield maps are really handy actually, because they will, especially today, I believe they should convince us that, especially with the reduced yield we have in headlands, you can do the math. I mean, if it's not covering your variable costs and your machinery costs, I mean, you might as well leave it barren anyhow. So, and especially, you know, given that we have input costs still sort of hovering up high with crop prices dropping, it takes a lot fewer bushels to make that a viable thing. And again, and then last thing is a permanent cover. And I got a picture here, the farm that we used to run, and so that's stripped wheat stubble and the corn's planted. But the big thing I wanted to show is over here on the right. This farm, the rows are planted perpendicular or parallel to the road, because there's about 30 feet of elevation difference coming towards us. The neighbor, he works the rows running to the road, and every time you get a 4-inch rain, the water and the topsoil are crossing the road. Whereas on this farm, I mean, things stay put. So, I mean, if you're going to run rows out and have, you know, 2,000 feet to the back of the farm, you don't want to be carting stuff out or doing whatever. So this fella, it's about a 20 or 25 foot grass strip there, and I mean, he used to run his little manure tanker down there, and basically gave him a great place to run. A couple of years ago, it was actually the last farm we were harvesting, and we got into some snotty weather. It was raining, and I mean, we were running semis right back on this, right to the back, and basically loading semis back there and bringing them out. And had we not had that grass strip, I mean, we'd still be there, because a day and a half later, we were crotch deep in snow. So it's an acre. So, you know, pick your poison. That's some of my solutions and the causes, and it was just a timed event, and thank you very much for your patience.